We hope you enjoy this audio-only podcast. You can watch the full video versions on our YouTube channel at All Things Unexplained. There we share visuals, documents, and extended discussions you won't hear anywhere else. While you're there, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new video. Plus, if you subscribe and comment on a video, that will enter you into our giveaways. But for now, enjoy this audio version of All Things Unexplained. On February 10th, 2026, the FAA declared a national defense airspace over a U.S. airport, potentially grounding flights there for up to 10 days and warning pilots that deadly force could be used. Within hours, the story began changing. Cartel drones, military lasers, even balloons, of course. This episode, we're laying out exactly what happened and what didn't. All right, Unexplained Ones, this is Dr. Mounts, and welcome back to All Things Unexplained. If you want deep dives into stories like this one, hit subscribe and leave a comment because this will make you eligible for our giveaways. I'll tell you more about that at the end of the video, so stick around. And yes, I'm wearing one of our All Things Unexplained hats and our Beast Mode hoodie. This hoodie commemorates my appearance in Beast Game Season 1 on Amazon Prime Video and our own Larry's appearance as number 76 on Mr. Beast's latest video called Ages 0 to 100, race for $250,000. But this episode, we're breaking down the timeline of a major U.S. airport shutdown, the competing explanations, and a perspective from friend of the show, Dreamland Resorts, Joerg Arnu. He sits just outside of Area 51 in Rachel, Nevada. So stick with me. We'll get into everything right after Larry.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
All right, so let's start with the timeline. Late on February 10th, 2026, the Federal Aviation Administration issued a sudden flight restriction affecting El Paso International Airport, grounding commercial, cargo, and general aviation traffic, and initially setting the restriction through roughly February 20th for what officials called special security reasons. The notice effectively created a national defense airspace, something rarely invoked outside of extraordinary circumstances. Then, early on February 11th, 2026, the FAA abruptly lifted the restriction, saying there was no threat to commercial aviation and flights could resume. So a shutdown announced as potentially lasting 10 days and reversed within hours. One explanation given by federal officials was that the shutdown was triggered by a cartel drone incursion near the border, with authorities saying the threat had been neutralized. I have flown into El Paso myself. I actually flew in there last October I rented a car and drove out to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, TRC, where I moderated the historic Roswell versus Washington debate. But I didn't realize until I flew out there to El Paso that literally Mexico is right there on the other side of the city line, right there on the other side of El Paso. You can see on the map that the Rio Grande serves as the international border between El Paso and Juarez, Mexico. Now, given that the cartels have used drones for surveillance and smuggling, this idea sounds very plausible, but local officials have questioned whether there was actually evidence of an incursion. Our second explanation for the El Paso shutdown was that it was some sort of anti-drone laser deployment. Reporting soon pointed to a more technical cause, the deployment of counter-drone laser systems near El Paso and Fort Bliss. Sources said the FAA shut down the airspace after coordination concerns about using directed energy technology near civilian flight paths. This version suggests the shutdown was driven by aviation safety rather than an active threat. And then, quite interestingly, this laser deployment got tangled up in a party balloon narrative. And this is perhaps, depending on how you look at it, the most surprising version or the least surprising version, since the government and the military have been blaming things on balloons for quite a long time, since at least 1947, as a matter of fact. Roswell, hint, hint. So all of a sudden we started getting reports that the response may have been a balloon mistaken for a drone during testing. Now, if that's true, that would mean a misidentification spiraled into a national level airspace action. And here's a report on MSN that says Customs Border Patrol shot down party balloons with anti-drone tech before the FAA closed the El Paso airspace. The article says the sudden closure of El Paso's airspace Wednesday came sometime after U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials used an anti-drone laser that was provided by the military to shoot down objects that were later identified as party balloons. 4 people familiar with the matter said the technology was used without coordinating with officials from the FAA. It goes on to say the testing of U.S. military-owned laser technology was taking place in the proximity of the airport. The FAA responded by issuing a temporary flight restriction notice, which was to shut down the airspace for 10 days. It prevented flights, including helicopters used for medical transport, below 18,000 feet. The airport is a major hub for the region with more than 50 flights scheduled every day. This goes on to say that Senator Ted Cruz of Texas has requested a classified briefing with the FAA over the closure. So whatever was happening, we now have this report of another reason, which is an agency dispute. And this definitely seems like there was some sort of dispute, because it's hard to imagine the FAA would just shut down the airport unless there was some sort of dispute going on somewhere. Multiple reports describe tensions between the FAA and defense officials over how to handle a situation like this, highlighting coordination challenges when military systems operate near busy air corridors. There was also an additional airspace restriction, as it turns out, that went by TFR 6/2234. This was not as widely reported, but while attention was focused on the El Paso airport, aviation watchers did notice another restriction west of El Paso near the East Petrillo Mountains. The FAA temporary flight restriction known as FDC 6/2234. I first noticed this on the X account, Tom Thompson, that's at Cortex_0. And the post sort of fueled speculation online that something else might be happening beyond the airport. All right, here's the sober takeaway about this incident. A shutdown of the El Paso airport was announced on February 10th. Flights resumed February 11th. Officials cited security concerns and explanations have ranged from drones to balloons to testing to lasers to misidentification to conflict between agencies. One thing that remains unclear is exactly why the messaging shifted so quickly. So I felt inclined to reach out to one of the foremost experts, in my opinion, in situations like this, and that's friend of the show, Joerg Arnu. He operates the Dreamland Resort website, and they sit just outside of Area 51 in Rachel, Nevada. And Joerg sent me this message to pass along to our listeners. Hi, Tim. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. I'm sorry, but in my honest opinion, what happened there is simple politics. The U.S. Air Force overly eager to try out a new toy and finding an excuse to do so. The attached screenshot shows the TFR, that's temporary flight restriction, mentioned in the X post as red trapezoid. The TFR goes only from the ground to 18,000 feet MSL, which is a boundary layer in aviation between two different classes of airspace. And Joerg passed along the link where you can check that out yourself. I'll put it in the show description. He went on to add, that means any altitude above 18,000 feet is open to traffic. And as you can see, there are commercial airliners traveling right through. If there was anything nefarious going on, the TFR would close the airspace to infinity. Sorry, I hope this helps. Joerg. What do you think happened with the El Paso International Airport? Let us know in the comments. All right, a quick reminder, subscribe and comment to be entered into our giveaways. We've got some great things to give you. We've got a signed copy of Sharp Force by Patricia Cornwell. Don't forget that we, All Things Unexplained, are in Identity Unknown by Patricia Cornwell. We've got some signed swag from author Bev Vincent, who writes in the Stephen King universe, and Bev will be joining us on All Things Unexplained soon. We've got signed copies of Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse by Colonel Drew Miller, who joined us on All Things Unexplained. We've got some terrific Sasquatch Coffee Company products from our friends over at Sasquatch Coffee Company. And I want to remind everybody that we've got some really exciting live guests coming up on the podcast. You can check all that out on allthingsunexplained.com. Until next time, this is Dr. Mouse. I want to encourage everybody to get off your screens for a little while this week. Spend some time out in the woods. Spend some time looking up at the sky. You may not find a Bigfoot. You may not spot a UFO, but you might just find yourself out there. On behalf of CJ and Smitty, thanks everybody.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.